Welcome to part 2 of Tony the Dino tutorial. We're going to start off by making a magic ring. Start off by taking your yarn and placing it in your non-dominant hand like this. You want to cross it over your top 3 fingers so that you make 2 parallel lines on one side and an X on the other side. Now you're going to take your crochet hook and go under the first loop and over the second loop. Pull the second loop under and twist your hook around, and then grab that working piece of yarn there and bring it through the loop. If you didn't catch that, don't worry, I'm going to show you again in slow motion. So start off by grabbing the yarn and bringing it over your top 3 fingers. Wrap it around so that you create an X on one side and 2 parallel lines on the other side. Get your crochet hook and pop it under the first loop and over the second loop. Bring that second loop under the first one and twist your hook as you bring it under. And then grab the working piece of yarn with your hook and bring it through the loop. So this magic ring is going to give us our arms of the dinosaur. Now that we have our magic ring done, we can go ahead and put our single crochets in there. So you want to go under both the tail and the magic ring when you're putting in your crochets. And we're going to place 8 single crochets into the magic ring. So just single crochet like normal, and just make sure that you are going over both the tail and the magic ring itself. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to close the ring later. So once you have 8 single crochets in there, we're going to pull the ring and just pull it gently, the tail. Make sure the ring isn't kind of crumpling in on itself, and make sure you pull it pretty tight. So now we can go on to round 2. Round 2 is just a single crochet in each one of these 8 single crochets around the circle. So place your first single crochet in the first available stitch and mark this stitch. And then carry on with the circle. We are just placing 1 single crochet in each one of these stitches around. We're going to have 8 stitches at the end of this round. So that's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And that's it for the first arm. So you can go ahead and remove your stitch marker and place a slip stitch in the next stitch to close it off. So remember, yarn over and pull through all the loops on your hook. And then you can cut the yarn, leave a tail about 9 inches or so, and then pull the yarn through, and that's it for the first arm. And just repeat this process all over again to make a second arm. So you can just rewind the video and start over. And don't forget to weave in your tail here as well so that the arm doesn't come unraveled later on in the project. And then once you have your second arm completed, I'll meet you back here and we will sew them onto the body. Now that we have 2 arms, we can sew them onto the body. So grab your yarn needle and thread the yarn needle with the tail of the first arm. And if you've never sewed on anything to an amigurumi, don't worry, it's super easy. It's just a basic stitch all the way around. So I like to place my arm a little bit below the eye, just like that, and about 1 stitch over from the eye. You can place your arms wherever you'd like, but I find this to be the best position. And then all you're going to do is stick your yarn needle into a stitch of the body and then into a stitch of the arm. And just pull the yarn through. So into the body and out through the arm. And just keep doing this all the way around the arm. You should have a total of 8 stitches, and you can go over each stitch a couple times if you want it to be super secure. And we are not going to be stuffing the arms at all, so you don't have to worry about that. So if this is your first time, just go slowly, make your way around the arm. Make sure it stays symmetrical and even as you're sewing. And if you're having trouble keeping it in one spot, you could always use a bobby pin or sewing pin to keep it in place while you're sewing it. Then once you have it all sewn on, you can just pop the yarn out of a random stitch through the body and then just weave it in back and forth a couple times to secure the end. And now you're going to do the exact same thing with the other arm on the other side. Just before you sew, make sure the arms are symmetrical and even before you finish sewing them on. So now that we have both arms on, we are going to move on to the tail of the dinosaur. So we're going to make another magic ring. If you need this slowed down, again, you can always rewind to the start of the video to see the magic ring done in slow motion. Now once you have the magic ring, we are just going to pop 5 single crochets. And again, make sure you're going under both the tail and the magic ring when you're single crocheting. So that's 4 and 5. And then we are going to close the magic ring. And then we're going to do a row of 5 single, and we're going to go around and do 5 increases. So go ahead and pop in your first 2 single crochets in that very first stitch here. So that's 1 and the second one. And then mark the very first stitch that you did. So that is going to be the second V away from the loop. And then we're going to go around the circle and continue increasing in each stitch, and that's going to give us a total of 10 stitches after this round. So another increase here, and another increase, and just keep doing that until you get back to the stitch marker. And now we're just going to do a single crochet in each one of these 10 stitches throughout the circle. So pop your first one in and then mark that stitch. And then continue a single crochet in each stitch around. That's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Now you can take out the stitch marker, and we are going to go from 10 single crochets to 15 in the next round. So we're going to be increasing in every other stitch around. So pop in your first single crochet in the next available stitch and then mark that stitch. And then in the next stitch we are going to do an increase. And then a single crochet. Increase. Single crochet. And just keep repeating this pattern until you get back to the stitch marker. So this is our last increase of the round. You should have 15 stitches. And then in the last round, we are just going to be doing 1 single crochet in each stitch around. So for a total of 15 single crochets. And then, as always, you can finish off the round by placing a slip stitch in the last stitch here. And then cut your tail, leave about 9 inches or so for sewing. And now we are going to sew on the tail onto the back of the dinosaur. And as always, don't forget to weave in your tail in the magic ring as well. Thread your yarn needle with the tail of the tail. And now we're going to sew it onto the back of the dinosaur, centered in between the arms, and make sure it's also symmetrical with the eyes. And sew it just a few rounds up from the bottom so that when the dinosaur is sitting on a table, he is sitting back on his tail. It's the same idea as the arms, so just poke your needle into a stitch on the body and then up through a stitch on the tail. And again, if you have trouble holding the tail still, you could always pin it down with some bobby pins. Before we finish sewing the tail all the way shut, we're going to leave about a finger wide opening and stuff the tail a little bit before we close it. So about 4 or 5 stitches away from finishing sewing, just pause and stuff the tail. And make sure you're not putting so much stuffing that you can see the stuffing through the tail holes. And make sure you really shape out the very point of the tail so that it looks like a triangle. And now that you're done sewing it on, you can just weave in that tail end. And in part 2, we're going to be crocheting the spikes, sewing the spikes on, and crocheting the little belly of the dinosaur. I will see you in part 3.